let's dive right into these Guardians because I know you have a lot of thoughts on them. Currently they are 4 games under 500, 14-18. Time of this recording, lost another tough game last night, 2-0 to the Minnesota Twins. Listen, I know you're frustrated, and I'm going to let you air those frustrations, but I'm also going to say I am going to be your calming voice today as well.
I need it. So I think first off, with the Guardians, I think expectations are what gets people in trouble, myself included. And I think that's why this slow start has hurt so much more, because they had such a fun season last year. They had no bad injury luck. Everything just kind of clicked for them. They had very timely hitting, and these 17 major league debuts were impactful. And obviously we know they took the Yankees to 5 games in the ALDS. So us as Guardian fans kind of waited all winter to see what was going to happen this year. And it hasn't came to fruition yet. And we got the Tristan McKenzie injury news in spring training. Then Savali goes down, and we're worried about the pitching. We thought the pitching would be the issue. Obviously, Logan T. Allen and Tanner Bybee and Peyton Battenfield, it'd be unfair to not include him in this, have came up and just dominated. But unfortunately, that doesn't matter if the offense cannot score runs. And I think that was so disheartening last night. Peyton Battenfield has a perfect game into the 5th inning, gives up a 2-run homer to Max Kepler, who has like 882 home runs at Progressive Field in his career, it feels like. And it felt insurmountable. It felt like it was 22-0, because I have zero faith that this lineup can score any runs right now. They have the lowest OPS in the league. They're second worst in slugging percentage. They have 17 home runs on the season, which is like 1 less than the Nationals or 1 more than the Nationals. It's just not going to get it done. When it's May 6th and you have 2 combined home runs from your starting outfield, it's just not going to play up here. And it just seems like there's an unwillingness to do anything about it. And what broke me last night was hearing Tito Francona on the manager's show say, there's no help coming. These are our guys. We got to break them out of it. They have to hit. And that broke me, because Brian Rocchio was at AAA destroying the baseball, and we're stuck with Ahmed Rosario because they held on to him for too long.
Well, with Ahmed, I still think somewhat he is going to bounce back. He's had a history of really struggling in the cold weather, which obviously would concern you by the time you get to September, October, but in those summer months, as we get into May, June, July, I do think he's going to bounce back, though I do think at some point, Brian Rocchio, as you mentioned, is going to come up. I don't know if it's right now. I almost think that they are waiting till the end of May. And I do believe that, because I think when you look at this team, and I was looking at the numbers compared to this year and last year, obviously the offense is not as productive as they were last year, but the record is almost identical. I think at this time last year they were 16-16. This year they're 14-18. So 2 games off the pace. Now, granted, I am also wondering if this year is going to be different because of the fact of the new balanced schedule. We're not going to be able to beat up on the Royals and the Tigers and the White Sox 19 times a year. I think it's like 10 times a year. But you're going to see a lot of those lower level teams. I think it's very exciting. But my general rule now when it comes to baseball is, if you're about 500 by May, I'm actually okay with it, specifically when it comes to this Guardians team, because I know they almost always take off in the second half. And I'm looking at teams, there's a lot of weirdness in baseball this year. Pittsburgh has obviously taken off. Texas has had a surprising start. We know the Cardinals are, down in the basement of the NL Central. So, and obviously what the Rays have done in Tampa, and the Yankees struggling too, and Aaron Judge just went down. So it's not just the Guardians. And so with this division being so weak to me, there is reason for optimism that even though everybody is struggling right now, we're not dead by any means. We're really right where almost we're supposed to be if we can just pick up a couple of victories.
They're not dead by any means, like you said, due to the fact they play in the AL Central. But what's most concerning to me, and why it feels a bit different than their slow start last year, is the way in which they're losing games. They've never lost 5 straight series under Tito Francona, and it's been, 11 years or something?
Yeah.
They have now. They haven't won a series since Washington, and before that, they hadn't won a series since Oakland, where they had the opening road trip and took the series from Seattle and Oakland. And Ahmed Rosario, so I do agree with you. I think he has his normal cold month, hot month, cold month, hot month, cold month, hot month. That's, if you look at his career stats every single year, it's how he goes.
Yeah.
He's god awful for a month, really good for a month, god awful. Like, it's very up and down with him. There's not really any middle ground there. But I think what's most concerning about Ahmed Rosario is he's in the 2 spot in the lineup, doesn't appear to be going anywhere, and he's mainly a ground ball hitter. And Stephen Kwan's getting on base at a fairly high clip at 358. So Stephen Kwan's getting on base, but he's immediately getting erased because Ahmed Rosario keeps hitting into double plays. Or he's striking out. He has a 28.7% strikeout rate, which is second on the team amongst regular players. And the book's out on him. Throw him a slider in the other batter's box. His back foot gets off the ground all wild. He wails away at it, and he's immediately down 0-2. The whole thing last week was, we're preaching patience to the guys, get deep into counts, make the pitcher work. As Andre Knott's talking about it on the broadcast, Ahmed Rosario swings at the first pitch, pops it up. Completely unproductive at bat. So my issue there is, move him down in the lineup. Because you have Andres Gimenez in the 7 hole, and he's trying to bunt for some reason. He keeps trying to bunt, which somebody needs to yoke him up by the jersey and demand that he stop bunting.
Yeah.
Because I said it on our podcast last week. Who are you bunting for? You're trying to get a runner into scoring position for who? Mike Zunino, who feels like he hasn't had a hit in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
For Miles Straw, who may get a weak dribbler that finds a hole, but we need you to drive in runs. We don't need you to be the guy to bunt guys over, right?
Yes.
Our whole lineup right now, the construction of it, it just feels like Tito has guys married to a spot in the order when based off last year. And it's why do we make it such a big thing in Cleveland to just kind of rearrange a lineup? Just to spark it a little bit. Sometimes you just need a spark. All it really takes is one guy to start hitting, and it can be contagious through the rest of the lineup. But it's disheartening when Stephen Kwan will get on base like he did in the 9th last night, and Ahmed Rosario immediately strikes out. And it's deflating. The rally's dead, just like that. Where it's I think even though Andres Gimenez is in a bit of a slump right now, he still is an 84 WRC plus, and that's including him being disastrous the last 2 weeks. And he's seeing different pitches down in the 7 hole than I think he would hitting in front of Jose Ramirez. He's trying so hard to swing himself out of his slump, like most of these guys are, that he's seeing less than 50% of his pitches in the zone. Because guys are going to be a little more careful with Andres Gimenez when you have Mike Zunino and Miles Straw behind him. Right? So I think if you moved Andres Gimenez up to that 2 hole, he could live out his weird bunting fetish if he really needed to, because Jose Ramirez is coming up. So that's fine. There might be some situations where you could bunt up there. And I also think he's going to see more pitches in the zone, which could allow him a better chance to swing the bat.
Right.
So I think there's some internal things they could do.
The thing is this year, you're not even, you mentioned it, the team has a total of 17 home runs. They are not hitting the ball out of the ballpark. Everything is mostly a base hit. I mean, they're not even getting a lot of doubles. It is mostly just base hit and walks and try to really get those runs in. And that includes Jose Ramirez, who, maybe it's because of, again, the lack of protection at not only 2, but at 4 as well, as Josh Bell is, really hot and cold, and more cold than hot. And so I think a lot of it has to do with outside of, Kwan, Jose a little bit, and then, Jimenez, you're not getting consistent at-bats from anybody. Straw had a good start. You mentioned, he's cooling off. They have a lot of speed, and it seems like that's the way that they want to score runs is, get base hits and steal bases and get sacrifice flies, basically. It's really in 2023, when you have teams like Tampa Bay, who again is in the same money situation as Cleveland, hitting the ball out of the ballpark every night.
They're leading the league in slugging.
Yeah,
and we're last in the league.
Yeah.
So it's like, how much of this is like a developmental philosophy? Because if you look at our minor league system, we're not even really developing power.
Yeah.
Outside of
You're right.
George Valera and John Kenzie Noel, there's really no consistent power to speak of in our system, because like you said, they put such an emphasis on contact.
Yeah.
Where it's like all contact is not created equal. If you're rolling over on balls and grounding out to second base, it's going to make your strikeout numbers look good, because sure, you didn't strike out, but are you helping the team win?
Right.
Not so much. It's like you have to barrel the baseball at some point, and it doesn't seem like anybody in this lineup is capable of doing that. I mean, and that's including Jose Ramirez.
Yeah.
He is not exempt from this criticism right now. And of course, he's the best one on the team. He's got a 118 WRC plus, a 447 slugging. So he's doing his part. I just think that, I mean, he has 3 home runs. Fernando Tatis was suspended for what, like 20 games, and he has more home runs than him already. Like, you got to hit the ball out of the park at some point. Like, we need him to do that as our franchise guy. Like, we need him to find a way to hit the ball harder.
How much in baseball? Because listen, baseball is a very analytical sport, I would say. It's definitely way more analytical than I would say basketball, and football is getting to that point. But I think baseball is the most analytical. I've always said that, in my opinion, I don't really care about swing rate or drive rate. I really care about, can you make contact on the ball? Can you advance runners? Can you hit the ball? But how much do you take into, I guess, analytical at bats and the bat speed and all that stuff?
I do think it matters, and I think the biggest thing is, are you barreling the baseball or not? Are you putting the best possible contact on the ball that you can? And then you look at like the BABIP and, the xWOBA, and you look at some of these stats that it's diving a little deeper, but basically it factors luck into this.
Okay.
And there are like Josh Naylor and Will Brennan have been 2 guys that have been like insanely unlucky. Like the casual fan can look at Josh Naylor and his 62 WRC plus, his 208 batting average, and be like, oh my God, he's trash. He sucks. Yeah. But he's actually been one of the most unlucky guys on the team to this point. He's hitting the ball really, really hard. He's just hitting it right at people.
Right at people.
And sometimes it'd be like that in baseball, where then you have a guy like Ahmed Rosario. He's not unlucky. He just hasn't been good.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he hasn't been putting good contact on the ball. So I think, especially for like a hitting coach, you can look at some of these stats and you can kind of have a starting point of, what do we need to work on for each particular guy? Like for a guy like Will Brennan and even Andres Jimenez to a certain extent, they're really struggling with the high heat. And most of this team can hit velocity. The issue becomes those guys throwing 90, 91 mile an hour fastballs, the breaking pitches, they're all out in front of it. And they're not making good contact. But then you have like Will Brennan, and Andres Jimenez is back to struggling with that high strike. He cannot lay off the high fastball. Where then you kind of got to see that the league adjusts to you. Yes. They're young guys. Now it's time for you to adjust back. And I think them sending Zach Plesac to AAA, it needed to be done. But I think it was also more about, listen, we're trying to take a leap. We're not going to throw this year away, because we're not wasting another year of Jose Ramirez, and we essentially have Josh Bell and Mike Zunino for a year. I mean, sure, if Josh Bell struggles, he's gonna pick up that player option and he'll be back. But essentially, like, the way they constructed this team this year, they wanted to take another leap. Yeah. And I think the plan all along was, let's look at the first half. Let's identify the holes, see how much regression is going to factor into this team. And we still have all our prospect capital. We can go make a move at the deadline. We can get a power bat in here or a starter. I don't think starting pitching's a need anymore.
I don't, and I agree. I think the one position, and we talked about obviously Mike Zunino a little bit. I do think very, very soon, possibly by June, maybe July, especially at some point this season, I think you are going to see Bo Naylor up here. I listen, when Zunino was signed, like you said, I wasn't so sure about it. I knew he wasn't as great defensively as what the Guardians had, for years, and we saw with Roberto Perez and Austin Hedges, and even you could put Yan Gomes in there. I think, and I've seen some people have made a good point that he still is somewhat learning the pitching staff, but he has certainly struggled when it comes to fastballs and defensively. The hope was that he was going to provide a little bit more offense from the catcher's position, which has obviously been dismal for the Guardians for years. That has not happened. And my counterpoint to that has always been, outside of JT Remuto and maybe Yadier Molina, in modern day baseball, there's not a lot of catchers hitting, above that Mendoza line of 200. Most of these catchers nowadays are defensive catchers. And so I think that's got to be part of it too.
Yeah, like guys like Adley Rutschman aren't the norm, right? The defensive pitching position requires so much defensively that's often why we see a lot of these guys struggle. But the thing with, I like that you mentioned, is they've always placed an emphasis on defense at catcher and handling the pitching staff for years. So we always got frustrated with Austin Hedges not hitting this and that. So then they bring in a guy, they're like, all right, we need a little bit more offense out of that catching position. So they bring in a guy coming off thoracic outlet surgery, which is no small surgery for a catcher, especially. And the hope is he's going to bring the offense. We're going to get maybe 15, 20 home runs out of that position. But he's not doing that right now, like you said. And if he's going to be that bad defensively, and I want to give him credit for his framing. His framing is spectacular. It's his blocking that he's a traffic cone.
And I agree with that.
He is awful at blocking balls. And to a certain extent, I think it's messed with Emmanuel Clase a little bit, because Emmanuel Clase likes to throw that slider in the dirt. And it was a wipeout pitch for him last year. But I don't think he has the confidence to throw that pitch when he doesn't have the faith that his catcher is going to stop that ball. So I think if Mike Zunino, and I'm sure they're working with him behind the scenes, but if he's just not capable of blocking balls like that, he has to hit the ball, because then what you're going to do is, like you said, around June or so, I think you have to bring up Bo Naylor. You have to catch him almost every day, and you got to DH Mike Zunino most of the time. And I also think they keep saying like, oh, Josh Naylor is capable of playing right field if we need him to. If that's truly the case and not just a smokescreen, I really think you need to consider giving him some starts in right field to, if nothing else, to increase the slugging in that outfield a little bit. Because I posed the question last week that are we at the point where Stephen Kwan and Miles Straw cannot both be two of your starting outfielders? Because that's a lot to rely on right field to provide all of your slugging when left field and center field's giving you nothing. And I think the hope was Stephen Kwan could hit 10 to 12 home runs because he showed that potential in the minor leagues. We know Miles Straw's not hitting a home run, but I think they did want to see if Stephen Kwan could give them just a little bit. No one's expecting him to hit 20 home runs, slug 700. That's not what we need him for. He's doing his job well in the leadoff spot. He's playing a good left field. But I think you need a little bit more power out of those corner spots. So if you're forced to DH Mike Zunino, then you're putting Josh Bell at first base. It would be helpful to keep Josh Naylor in the lineup against righties. Maybe give him a couple starts out in right field. But I do think those are a couple of those moves, Brandon, that we could see coming around June or so if this team continues on like this.
Well, I think, and the issue with that is, and again, Straw is not the greatest hitter, but he's not doing terrible in the 9 position, and he's so good defensively in center field. Yeah,
he's outstanding.
And I've said this, and even last year, when people were talking about, he needs either for an outfield or trade Straw, he's terrible offensively. There's not even the best center fielders in baseball that can sometimes do what he can do. He is so good defensively. That, and again, Quan can play center. But I just think Straw's speed and his ability, and especially with the way this offense is constructed, as we've talked about now, I just think that I have a hard time getting him out of center field. So if you have, let's say Quan in left, Straw in center, if you want to put Naylor in right, well, then it's like, Will Brennan, Oscar Gonzalez, these are young guys who are not productive enough, I would say, to be your everyday DH. And so that's almost the dilemma you're in. I think with Zunino, instead of maybe having him DH, maybe you have Naylor or Bell still platoon in DH, and maybe he just becomes that catcher for one or two of the pitchers, because we know that catchers obviously cannot catch almost every day unless you're Salvador Perez in Kansas City. Maybe Naylor becomes your primary catcher, but then Zunino only catches 1 or 2 days a week, and then you don't have Cam Gallagher on the team anymore. To
Yeah,
me,
I'm assuming Cam Gallagher would go at that point.
To me, like that is your better scenario, because Zunino as an everyday DH, especially if he's not hitting as productive, I don't see that working out.
Yeah, he would. This is all reliant on him picking up that offense a little bit. And I mean, Josh Naylor, we're talking like 1, maybe 2 starts every couple weeks. Nothing like that will put him in the regular outfield rotation. But that's the frustrating thing about the right field position, is we thought we had a lot of depth there and we're going to be really good. But neither Oscar Gonzalez nor Will Brennan have been able to really pull away. I mean, Will Brennan got off to a pretty decent start to the season. He was the surprise opening day right fielder. I think a big time too is it's hard for these young guys to get in a rhythm when they're, like they're only playing a couple days a week. Like we had a string where we faced like 6 lefties in a row, and Will Brennan never even saw the field. Yeah. He's been in a slump ever since. And I think that's one of the fears that me and some other people had when they held on to every single one of these prospects all off season. They've been kicking the can down the road for 2 years.
Yeah.
With all these prospects who are ready to be in the majors, but they're holding them back at AAA because there's nowhere to play these guys.
Yeah.
So now every single worst case scenario is now coming true with these young guys, where it's like they definitely could have dangled Ahmed Rosario in the offseason. I mean, the Dodgers traded for what? Rojas from the Marlins. Once Gavin Lux went down, they needed a shortstop.
Yeah.
You definitely could have got something for him then, but it was that awkward, like, well, we don't want to send the wrong message to the clubhouse and this and that. But you're not re-signing him. You're going to let him walk and you're going to take the draft pick. But what you risk doing is now you have Gabriel Arias not playing every day. He can't get in a rhythm. He's rotting on the bench, turning into a corpse right before our eyes. You have Tyler Freeman with an OPS over 850 at AAA. He literally has nothing else to prove down there. Like, I feel so bad for that kid. And then Brian Rocchio. These guys have like 22 game hit streaks in AAA because they're not AAA hitters. Yeah, they're major league hitters, but you have Ahmed Rosario blocking those guys from being able to come up. That could help our lineup. And that's why I get so frustrated when Tito comes on a manager's show like there's no one who can help us. It's insulting to those guys at AAA. I understand you're going to protect your players at the major league level and you're not going to lose faith in them, definitely not publicly, but don't insult those guys at AAA who are literally busting their asses every single day. And what message does that send them? There's a way to say what you said without bringing those guys into it, because they could help your team right now. And you're really in no position to say that when you have the worst offense in baseball statistically.
So quickly, I just want to say that, I am usually a traditionalist when it comes to baseball. And I was very not sure about these potential rule changes. I was vehemently against them when they were first announced. Wasn't sure that they were going to work. And then the first week of baseball season happened, and I came on this podcast and I admitted, I was wrong. I am pleasantly surprised at the pitch clock actually working. I thought it was going to be a complete disaster. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I thought pitchers were going to struggle with it a lot more than they had. Now we have seen some pitchers obviously struggle with it. Karen Check obviously at the beginning of the year for our ball club, but I don't know if it necessarily has had the scoring impact that I think we've all kind of expected it to. Again, banning the shift and all that, I thought it was taking away strategy from the game, but you know what? It is producing more base hits. I don't know necessarily how much the bigger bases are actually impacting stolen bases, but I think we're on pace for 1,500 more stolen bases this year in baseball, which is good for the whole game. So again, I was against it. I always thought baseball was a sport that didn't need a clock. I always thought baseball was the one sport that was kind of understood that it's a slower game, but it's making the game faster. I still don't know. My one knock on it is I still am questioning how much it's actually going to bring new fans into the sport because they still, no matter what, Mel, don't market their stars.
Yeah. It's always going to be the thing that comes back to bite them. They're awful at marketing their superstars. And also they have the games spread out. You have local blackouts, which still are a thing and don't appear to be going anywhere. I would hope, with these regional sports networks, all the bankruptcy with Bally's, I was hoping that would kind of be the start to the end of local blackouts, which would certainly help. But then it's like you have games spread out on Peacock and Apple TV and Amazon Prime and all over the place, MLB Network, which a lot of cable companies don't even have. It's hard for fans to even find the games on TV, which is another big part of it. You have the NFL that they're on CBS, they're on Fox, they're on ESPN Monday nights. Yeah. It's like fans know where. Yeah, they know where to find the games at. And, then you have NFL Sunday Ticket, you can watch all of them. So I think the way they broadcast the game is really difficult. And I think they're on the right track with these new rule changes, as long as this is the end game. Is Rob Manfred trying to get games under an hour next? I think there's a fine line where you don't want to take away from the baseball experience at the ballpark. Because I'm a person that when I take my kid down to Progressive Field, we like to enjoy the game. Yes. Now it's you go to the concession, you go to get something to eat and you miss half an inning.
So have you been there since the rule changes?
I have. I've been there twice so far, and I'm actually going next Friday, which I'm more excited to see Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani than my own baseball team. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. But it's true. I took him to go to the bathroom and we missed a full inning against the Yankees.
Wow.
The full inning was over. And it's so now they've introduced these self-checkout lines at Progressive Field. Everything's really self-checkout now. But it's then if you're in line and either you don't know how to work it or the person in front of you doesn't know how to work it, you're going to be stuck in this self-checkout line. They only have one person to be able to come over and help you with all these different lines. So then you're facing those kinds of delays. So I think they're onto the right track with it. And I think definitely secretly too, the players like it because think about it. They're making the same amount of money. It's less wear and tear on their bodies. They're playing, they're playing less time a year, which is going to help them in the long run. So the only thing I don't like that pickoff rule personally, once you throw over 2 times, then because then it's basically like an automatic steal, which we've seen it with our own bullpen. James Karinchak and Emmanuel Clase are not good at holding runners on at all. Even without these rules, they stunk at holding runners on. So the fear was always when runners got on base, they were going to run on them. So then it's if that happens, then suddenly you got a runner in scoring position. Then back to our previous point, Emmanuel Clase is afraid to throw the slider in the dirt because then a pass ball gets the guy to third base. So I think all this does kind of factor in. You have also Emmanuel Clase with lower velocity. The big talk has been his velo on his fastball is down 3 or 4 miles an hour. And is the pitch clock to blame for that? And I don't know how natural it is for the human body to rev back and throw 102 miles an hour every 17, 18 seconds.
No, and I completely agree. And I have said too, I think that when you don't have a runner on base, I think the pitch clock should still be 20 seconds. I think 15 is way too short because by the time they get the ball back, get set, there's always like 2 or 3 seconds left on the clock.
Yeah.
And I mean, it is literally like the shot clock in basketball, where it's not like in the NFL where, clock hits 0, they sort of look up, and if you still haven't snapped the ball, then it's a delay game. That clock hits 0, and they are immediately like strike or ball in the case
they've
of the
been
pitcher.
quick with it too.
So
like there was a situation, where was it at, where someone was getting a standing ovation by
with
the crowd.
Dodgers, and he
You
was in
gotta
the
know.
box in 8 seconds, and they called him.
Yeah, you gotta read the room. There has to be some discretion.
My other thing too is, I think in extra innings you should eliminate the clock. Like I don't know if if there's a situation, right, bottom of the ninth or tight game where it's a 3-2 count, bases are loaded, you're gonna decide the game on a pitch clock.
Yeah, like, that the hope is that doesn't start to happen regularly. Yeah, that's a shame.
I don't like it. I think that's been my one major issue with the clock. Is it is taking away a little bit from, in baseball we always have like the stare down between the pitcher and the catcher, the drama of like bottom of the ninth or extra innings, and now it feels like, the 10th inning is like 1 minute, and sometimes the runner on second base has something to do with it too. There's so much change that it's hard for even, I think, younger fans to grasp it. And again, I don't even know, like, when I've been to a game, I've seen kids and adults, like, I haven't been this year yet to Progressive Field, but usually it's, even if it's a close game, it's the 6th, 7th inning, and they're still on their phones, not even watching the game.
Yeah, that's always a part of it too. And some fans just aren't going to be interested in the game, regardless of any of the rule changes you make. So then you risk alienating the traditionalist fan who likes. I mean, there's a lot of older people I see who go to games. They still have like the scorekeeping book. They're keeping score throughout, and they enjoy the baseball experience. And it's like, you're going to raise ticket prices, you're going to raise food prices, but you're at the parks shorter. Yeah. So it's like, I'm kind of like a bang for my buck type of person. Like, if I'm spending money on these tickets, like, I want it to feel like a baseball game. Yeah. I don't really want to be out in an hour and a half, but that's also because I love the game of baseball and I have my whole life. So I understand some people are like, okay, it's a school night, it's a work night, can we wrap this thing up?
Yes.
Sometimes it can get drawn out, but I think they're on the right track. But I do wonder if they're kind of gonna tinker with some of these rules, like, moving forward.
You like that clip from the Brands World Podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brands World Podcast right here on YouTube.